Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Grayman. We're going to be answering some questions about OCD. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. If you have a question that you would like me to answer on the next show, please leave it below any of the videos and let's get started. So the first question I have is, can OCD have an effect on short-term memory loss? My anxiety and OCD have both thankfully improved, but I find myself struggling with short-term memory loss and it had me concerned. Thank you. So in terms of short memory loss, I'm not really sure what you mean. If you mean that you're still not focusing so much on your daily life because of OCD, because that happens a lot where the person is still thinking a lot about OCD thoughts, and because they're thinking a lot about that, they're not really focusing on what they're doing. And because they're not focusing as much, um, short-term stuff kind of slips. But if that's what you're talking about, that's going to improve as your OCD goes down. There's nothing you have to do about that. Um, Another thing is when you have false memory OCD and you feel like you need to remember every second, because what if you've done something wrong, and what if there's you did something bad or that kind of a thing, and you feel like you don't remember things exactly, and you feel like you need to remember everything to a great degree. If that's the case, then this is part of OCD, and you need to make sure that you're not trying to remember every second of every day, because if your mind doesn't remember it, there is a reason for it. It means it's not important. So trying to bring something up when you have, say, I don't remember what I did between this moment and this moment, let me try hard to remember to make sure I didn't do anything wrong. If you're going through it like that, then the more you think about it, the more you're going to find something to grab onto, because it's OCD, right? So if your mind doesn't remember it, it's going to try to find something to attach to. So when there's really nothing to attach to, because nothing happened, right? Not to give you reassurance, but this is the same thing all the time, right? That whenever you have an OCD thought, and what if this, what if that, right? And your mind wants you to look deeper into it, just refusing. Because the more you do it, the worse you're going to feel, because your mind wants you to react with fear. Because if you're reacting, and again, a lot of this I'm repeating from previous shows, but for new listeners, I have to kind of repeat it, that if your mind sees that you are reacting with fear, that means that you are in danger. Doesn't matter what you're reacting with fear to, right? It could be something really silly, but if you're reacting with fear, your mind takes it to mean that there is danger, because that part of the mind cannot decipher things on its own. It needs you to tell it whether something is important or not. So whatever you label as important, no matter how silly and trivial it is, your mind is going to say, okay, it is important. And it's going to bring you more thoughts of the same kind, or as I call it, the same theme, in order to get you to react. Because if it's important and you're reacting to it with fear, well, it better bring it up again to make sure you're protecting yourself, to make sure it's on the front of your mind, so to speak, right? So that's the mechanism. So the way you can control the mechanism is by refusing the reaction to these things. So anything to do with your theme, you're refusing your reaction, and not looking into these blanks in time where, well, I don't remember exactly what happened. You don't remember because nothing happened. So just move on. So if that's the case with you, if it's, like I said, if it's just the short-term memory loss in its true form, in terms of, you just can't remember things well, nothing really to do with OCD directly, it is because of all the stress, and you're not focusing on real life still. So this will go away gradually as your OCD goes away. You're gonna start focusing more on real life, and then that's gonna it's gonna have more of an impact left on your mind, rather than just OCD thoughts. So the next question I have is, great show as always. Thank you for important work. You have helped me recover from OCD. Thank you so much. This is really sweet. I have one question. So it's the brain that sends the thoughts and the mind that chooses the reaction. So the brain, which is the mechanical part, right? The part that goes on autopilot, the part that doesn't have the ability to decide which thought is valid and which is not, right? That's what I refer to, and that's where the problem lies. To fix the brain, we need the conscious part the real you, the soul you, so to speak, right? To say this is OCD, this is not real. I don't need to validate this thought by giving it a reaction. And as you refuse that over and over and over again, you can get many, many thoughts throughout the day, and every time refusing them, the not conscious, so to speak, right? The reactionary part of the brain sees that and says, okay, well, if it's not important to you, I'm not going to send you these thoughts anymore because it's not important, it's not dangerous, you're not reacting to it with anything. So I guess that it's not valid. So those are the two different parts. But sometimes I use these terms interchangeably, but that's what I mean when I say those things. So the next question I have is, Ali, can you speak about substance abuse and OCD? I, for one, have had first-hand experience in self-medicating my symptoms only to have them come back much worse. Thank you. Well, okay. So anytime, and I'm going to talk, just kind of broadly about different types of substance abuse, and maybe just generally, having a drink. Whenever you're having a drink and you have OCD, it's especially if you have false memory types of OCD, it's very likely going to make your symptoms worse because it's going to trigger you basically because it's your brain is looking for any loophole to see how it can bring more of these same theme thoughts. So say for example you have harm OCD thoughts, and say you were somewhere and you had a drink. You can have literally just teaspoon of say wine, and you will feel like you've been out of control. What if something happened? All of this stuff. And you've had a teaspoon. It's not about the drinking, it's about the OCD. And then people get into the situation where they say, well, I cannot drink under any circumstances because of OCD. And while I don't condone drinking, also avoiding things because of OCD is not a good idea. So having a glass of wine is not going to make you go out of control. So there's that kind of fine line there where you don't want to avoid, but at the same time you don't want to go overboard with things as well. Also, you have to keep in mind that if you are on medication, you shouldn't be drinking at all because it's not just the drinking. Okay, it's if you're having a lot of coffee, right? Coffee is technically not substance abuse, of course, but at the same time, you're still messing with your mind. So your mind is producing more cortisol, it's a more adrenaline when you're drinking coffee, right? You're super alert, the anxiety goes up, right? And then you take medication, and then you have some alcohol at the same time. Can you imagine this cocktail that's going on in your mind? So you have to be very mindful of the substances that you're actually putting in you and what kind of effect they're going to have on your OCD recovery. Same thing with sugar, spiking sugars up and down. So all of this is not good. So you want to have even kind of situation throughout the day where you're busy but you're not too busy. You have some stress in your life. Some stress is normal. You can't get rid of all the stress because then when it comes back, then you're going to have a hard time dealing with it. So recovering from OCD while having a little bit of stress is actually beneficial, but if the stress is through the roof, then you need to fix that because your regular life stress will affect OCD. Same thing. So all of these things kind of play a part. In terms of actually self-medicating because you just can't deal with reality, it's, obviously you don't need me to tell you that it's not a good thing. And instead, just really focusing on the work, not getting away from it in the moment because it's almost like another way. It's not really reassurance, but it's another way of escape. So you escape through reassurance or avoidance or through the drinking or whatever, but you don't need to escape, you need to get rid of the problem. So looking at the problem at its core and not momentary solution. But it's a difficult thing, so it's just doing the best you can pretty much every day, and every moment of every day, because every moment of every day that you have OCD, your mind, or rather just to be kind of correct in how I'm speaking, your brain is looking to you the mind, right, to see if the thoughts are valid. And the more you give in and the more you reinforce the fact that you're scared, the worse you're getting. So every time you're not doing the work, you're actually getting worse. You're not really staying the same. You're reinforcing that this is reality. This makes sense to me. And it's just going to be that much harder the next day. So really focusing on the work is probably my best advice that I can give you. But it's, again, doing the best you can. So next question. Hi Ali, can you explain why my anxiety and OCD spikes before and during my period? Yeah, because of hormones. That's why it spikes. And that was common for pretty much most of my clients. It was common for me. It's a normal situation. What I would say is use it as exposure. So before you're entering this time frame, right? I know I'm going to get OCD. I'm not going to react, and really focusing on the work and not reacting. It's the fact that you're getting the thoughts, it's not necessarily bad, because when you're getting the thoughts, it means that you have the opportunity to show your brain that these thoughts are not important. And you need to show your brain in order to recover, because you can't recover without showing your mind, right? So you need to do the work, and this gives you the opportunity to do so. Looking at it that way kind of helps the situation. Before I go any further, I wanted to kind of share something with you. I read an article recently, and it was actually exactly what I'm talking about on the show. I'm like, are they listening to the show? Because it's exactly the same kind of theory and exactly the same process of recovery. But what I found really interesting is they did a test study where they took two groups of people. One group had OCD, one did not. And they asked them, do you get these types of thoughts? Do you get these types of thoughts? And kind of went through common OCD themes. And what they found is that the answers between both groups are the same. So both groups are getting the same types of thoughts. So when you have OCD and you think, normal people cannot possibly get these thoughts, they actually found that they do get the same types of thoughts. But the difference, and it was a very clear, stark difference, was in the reaction. So when a person who doesn't have OCD or doesn't have OCD tendencies, right? Because I think you're really kind of born with inclination to one day get OCD. But until you actually get it, technically, the first time you get the thought, you don't have OCD yet, right? That it develops after the thought, right? So the people who don't develop OCD from these thoughts, they don't take them seriously. So they have a thought, they don't even, they remember it for a second and it's gone. And sometime later they'll get some other weird thought, and it just goes one after another, but they're not putting value into them. And people with OCD were putting a lot of value into the thoughts, and starting to go into the direction of, well, what does this mean about me? Am I a bad person? And it's starting like that. So I just found it really interesting, because this is actually a study done that shows that because you're having these thoughts, it doesn't make you any different from anybody else. And I found that to be kind of reassuring. And reassurance is bad, you shouldn't be getting reassured, but at the same time, it does help to keep going and keep fighting, because now you can see that it's not the thought that's the problem, it's the reaction that's the problem. So moving on to the next question. How come certain topics can make OCD theme for me? For instance, I feel anxiety when I look at the mirror. I've been fine for the past month. It just occurred all of a sudden. So whatever is the most important thing to you, that's what OCD attaches to in the opposite way. So for example, if your family is the most important thing to you, what if some harm comes to your family? If you are a really good person, really sensitive, really don't want to do any harm, you're going to get harm OCD. What if I do something bad to another person? If you're very religious, the worst thing for you to do would be to go against your religion. That's what it's going to attach to, right? So it's the opposite of what means the most to you. And as we go through life, these things tend to change, right? So, for example, I talk to a lot of women who are pregnant or have just given birth, right? And they might get stuck on a thought about the baby, right? Or also a big topic, I talk to a lot of people who have religious OCD, right? So, what if, just like I said, right? So, it shifts as you go through life. So depending on what is the most important thing to you in the moment. So and again, it's comes with a lot of anxiety. Well, what if and something something something, right? So just saying, I'm not reacting. This is understanding why it's happening, not looking at the actual situation of what the worst case scenario it's giving you, but stepping back and looking at it from a mindfulness perspective of a third person. Well, why did this thought, just like you're asking me, why did this thought just occur? Well, probably because it has some importance in your life. If the worst case scenario has some importance in your life and you are in an anxious state, your mind was looking for something, it attached to that. That's all that happened. But now the most important thing is your reaction. Is if you're getting this thought all the time, how are you reacting? If you're reacting with fear, if you're reacting with a lot of anxiety, you need to stop that, pull back as much as you possibly can, but really focusing on it every single day and refusing to give that validity to the thoughts, and then it's going to go away just like your other ones went away. The reason why it went away and you never had OCD for a month is because you stopped reacting. If you would have kept reacting, the thought would have kept going. And people stop reacting for different reasons. Sometimes it's not even on purpose. It's not even because of doing the work, but because the person gets really busy with something else, or something happens in their life besides the regular day to day that takes their attention away. Because all you're doing at its core is you're taking your attention and you're putting it elsewhere, whether it's through consciously doing the work or just because you got sidetracked by something more important. As long as you take the attention away, OCD goes away. Because you have to keep powering the thought up with your attention for it to keep going. So you stop powering it up, the thoughts went away, now you got a new thought, you powered it up, and now it's happening again. So because it hasn't been happening for a long time, you have the perfect opportunity to stop now. This is OCD. I'm not, from this moment on, I'm not reacting anymore. And then you should see that if you keep this focus for a few days, you should see the OCD start to go down. But keep in mind, just like I say in my other videos, right, that before it starts to go down, chances are your mind is going to try to bring you more new thoughts in order to get you back to reacting. So that first stage is pretty much happens to everybody. So if you feel like you're actually getting more thoughts instead of less, because that's a common question. Well, I'm not reacting, but instead of getting less thoughts, I'm actually getting more thoughts. Well, that's just because that's the first stage and your mind is not used to you doing that. So your mind needs to adjust, and that's how it adjusts. So at first it sends you more thoughts, and then as you still continue to refuse the reaction, and at first, this is the most critical part when it's doing that. You have to send a clear signal that this doesn't matter to you anymore. And in order to do that, you just have to be very vigilant. Every time you get a thought, you're not reacting. And as the mind learns this, it's going to start to work with you instead of working against you and actually sending you less thoughts. So next question is, hi Ali, does meditation help to reduce OCD compulsion? Does deep breathing help cut down OCD? Yeah, of course, because again, you're showing your mind that everything is okay, that everything is calm. So, in every way, you're not exposing yourself to too much stress, but some stress is okay. But again, within normal parameters. If your stress is through the roof, that's not good, right? Not reacting to OCD thoughts, refusing the reaction, not having a lot of caffeine as well, because again, not amping up your life to the point where you can't deal with it and it just creates stress, right? And meditation will help reduce the compulsions because it helps to reduce stress. And when there's less stress, it's easier to deal with the thoughts. Because if you're compounding stress of real life on top of stress of OCD, it's, it's going to make the whole situation worse, right? And it does make OCD symptoms worse as well, because your mind says, If you're stressed, if you're anxious, that means you are in danger, and let me send the worst possible thoughts to you, and those tend to be OCD. So meditation will help calm your mind to reduce the compulsion. So it doesn't reduce the need for compulsion on its own. It helps you do the work. The second question, does deep breathing help cut down OCD? Yes, because when you're doing the deep breathing, and I think I mentioned this technique in earlier videos, but you breathe in on the count of 3, you breathe out on the count of 6. So your breath out is double the breath in. So, and what you do, what that does is it brings more oxygen to the mind, because it just makes the brain work better, right? And makes it easier again for you to disregard the thoughts. It doesn't do the work for you, but just like the meditation, it makes it better. So next question is, hi Ali, I'm extremely interested in your recovery program, but I'm not sure which program suits me. How can I figure it out? I'm not sure if I need the first level program or the second, as my anxiety has subsided greatly, but I still need help. Thank you. So if you're interested in the recovery program, you're not sure which one to get, I would suggest with going the middle one, which is 4 times a month, which I usually break down to once a week. Actually, what usually happens is the first 2 or 3 sessions we do once a week, and then at the end of the month, because the person already knows what they need to do, they're more in control of the thoughts. The 4th one, a lot of the time, we kind of leave as needed. So the person, it might be 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away. As the person needs it, they'll contact me. But it's up to you. Or you can do closer. So instead of doing them once a week for a month, right, having the 4 sessions, you'll do it in the 2-week span, so twice a week. So it just depends what works best for you, but we can always adjust as needed. And also you get the support between the sessions to do the work. So because as you are doing the work, as you are working on recovery, you might have questions throughout the day that come up, and that way you can just text me and get the answer really quickly. So I would say just go with the middle package. So the next question is, hi Ali, can certain places trigger the OCD thoughts? I get these thoughts triggered at places where it occurred the first time. I also feel a little depressed and it seems like my mind has gone on autopilot. Will it be okay after I recover from the thoughts? Thank you for your help. So yeah, of course, once you start to do the work, you will see that autopilot of sending you the thoughts starts to shift to not sending you the thoughts. Because indirectly, by the way you're reacting, you're controlling that autopilot. But right now it's set to OCD thoughts and that specific theme. And it's trying to find anything related to that thought that you are so scared of. So yeah, say similar place or same place, or even seeing something on TV, or having somebody talk about it, or even it coming to you in dreams. Any way your mind can bring this up, it will. Because it's looking for any loophole, anything possible to bring you the thoughts, because it learned that this is scary to you. So nothing wrong with it, this normal OCD process, but again, doing the work, you will recover. And once you recover, then your mind will start working with you instead of against you and not sending you these thoughts anymore. And yeah, it will go back to normal. Now, normal does not mean that you will never get anxiety, but you will not get anxiety to this level about thoughts that most people would just find really silly, right? Not realistic, all of this kind of stuff, right? So, but to say that you'll never get anxiety ever again in your life, of course, we're all human, we all get anxious, but it's never going to be through the roof where you're unable to function or anything like that. It'll be about regular things and just like everybody else, basically. So we've come to the end of the show. If you have any more questions, please visit youhaveocd.com. There's a private recovery program there with me. There's ebooks, there's information on recovery, there's lots of information on there. There's also audiobook rentals available through this channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.